welcome back to Boys and Ghouls Film Review. I am your host, Sarah Stephenson, and this is my co-host, Michael Stephenson.
Hello, everybody.
So, Mike, what are we doing today?
Well, this one's a bit different because we normally do horror, sci-fi, fantasy, but we did say in a previous podcast that if another good movie comes along, we think it's worthwhile reviewing, we'll throw that in. Okay. Now, this one's actually an action-adventure film, a very, very well-known one. It was done in 1981. Now, it's called, drum roll please, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Ooh. Now, everyone's going to go, some people are going to say, hey, that's a great movie, and some people are going to go, oh, groan. Yeah, no, it's a good movie, and the reason being...
Yeah, it has a bit of it's a bit of everything in it, guys. A bit of adventure, a bit of fantasy, a bit of history, and a little love interest, as Mike says, and a bit of action and all that stuff.
It's a good mix. It's a good, fun movie. It's not quite horror. It's not quite fantasy, but I think, it's borderline almost getting into those realms. So, but the action-adventure part, I think it makes it really interesting, and it's fun because of who actually made it. Yes. Now, if you look at it, it was directed by Steven Spielberg. The production company was Lucasfilm. The story was done by George Lucas and Philip Kaufman. So these guys have worked together in other projects as well, and everything seems to come out, I wouldn't say fantastic, I'd say extremely great, because they're a good team.
Yes, and another thing about this film, it's kind of brought out a lot of fandoms. You know, people who are young people out there who like to do fan films.
Well,
and
exactly right.
This is where I'm going to bring in my two best friends, Eric Zala and Chris
Strompoulos.
Yes.
Strompoulos?
Who, when they were about 13 or 12...
No, I think about 13, 14 in school.
Yes.
You know, the next couple of years,
yes,
they actually put their own fan film based on this. They followed the script as much as they could, and on a school kid's budget, mind you. I don't know what sort of camera they use, a handy camera. I don't know what they use, Super 8 back in those days. They did pretty good, but hang on, I'll just get his right name. So, it's Chris Strompoulos. Strompoulos. And as Eric Zala, and I think they did it down in Biloxi. Is that Missouri or somewhere? Down in Biloxi in America, and they're in that area. And as school kids, they put a really, really good thing together. And it was, what do you call it? A dedication, whatever.
Adaptation of
it, but it was dedication to George Lucas and Steven Spielberg because I was so impressed with the movie.
Yeah, they were blown.
They were blown away, not blown. Oh, Lord. It's like Demolition Man. Now, I will say one thing. There have been lots of other fan-based movies done, some by young people and some not so. That one of that Casanova guy, he's not a young guy.
No, he's pretty much an independent filmmaker, a lot like me.
Yeah, but he wasn't young. He wasn't like a school kid doing it. And that one with the German one.
That would be Marcel.
And they weren't young either. They were, say, young adults.
Yeah, but I often think Marcel was studying filmmaking.
He
so
but still,
at the time,
but they weren't kids making it. And their versions in filmography wasn't too bad. So so I don't forget to tell you, go online and see if you can download some of these fan-based films. Some are short, some are feature length. Yeah. They're very worthwhile looking at.
Yeah. So, one of my favorite ones I'm bringing up is, apart from Eric and Chris's version, is the Indiana Jones Interrogations.
Yeah, who did that? I can't remember his name.
That was Jonathan Rogers, who directed and written, maybe not written, directed and starred in this production.
Yeah, and he made a very, very, very good Indiana Jones. He copied Harrison Ford's personality
down to a T.
Pretty close, I'd say. I mean, he got that smirk, that arrogance, he got that personality come out.
Yeah, but I've noticed over the years of watching fandoms, I do see that somewhere along the line, some of them actors, or kids or guys who portray him, they always capture something in Harrison Ford's character.
Some of the essence of Harrison Ford sort of comes into it. However, there's also always an exception to the rule, and that has to be Indiana Bones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, that was done by Zach King, and instead of having Indiana Jones, a human being, he got his dog, what was his name?
Snickers.
Snickers, who played a dog who was like Indiana Jones. It's a short thingy. So I don't know if it's still available online, but if you go online, look for Indiana Bones.
Oh, not Snickers.
No, was it?
I don't know the name of the dog. Sorry.
It wasn't Snickers, the other guy's dog. That was
yeah,
Chris's
that
dog.
was Chris's dog. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
But don't know the dog's name, but it was Indiana Bones, Bones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, like in Woof Woof.
Yes.
Done by Zach King, Zachking. Zach King is a very talented guy. Does a lot of, what is it? Is it Vine videos and different things? And he's a really talented guy. He's technically does magic with films, but he does a short thing, spoof you could call it maybe, using his dog, and it's so cute and wonderful. And
yes.
Yeah.
So we're drifting.
We're giving a tribute to these people who have been inspired by this movie. But we're going to roll on, aren't we, now?
Yes,
and
we
talk
are.
about the movie
so
itself?
the film itself is about Indiana Jones and how he goes in search of the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah. Now, for those of you who might not be too religious and stuff, now, in the Christian faith, well, the Jewish and Christian faith, Moses was given the Ten Commandments. They were supposedly subsequently broken, and the pieces were put into a box, which is referred to as the Ark of the Covenant. And that was a special box and a religious icon, which was carried around by Moses and his people in the desert, in the wilderness. That's okay. Yeah. Anyway, they did. They kept that in a specially made tent, and that was a place of worship and a place of judgment, like a king would have. They were nomadic, and but that was the base of their religion, and they ended up in Jerusalem. But Jerusalem temple got ransacked a couple of years after the temple was built, say 7 years after the temple was built, and the Romans may have taken it away. We don't know, because it disappeared about that time.
Yes.
So that's this explanation of what the Ark of the Covenant is. So that's the base of this movie. They're looking for this religious icon which has been missing for 3,000 years.
Yeah, and Hitler, who is a fanatic for power, decides to try to take it.
And he's a nutter for supernatural stuff.
Yeah, but the biggest nutter in this film, I would say, is Balak, Indiana Jones's arch rival.
He's arch rival who happens to be working for the Nazis. But he has his own hidden agenda as well. He wants to find it for himself to a certain degree.
So it's up to Indiana Jones to find the Ark before Balak does.
Exactly right. Mm-hmm. He's constantly flying the ointment when Indiana Jones is looking for something. As you know, the beginning of the movie, they're chasing something else.
Yeah.
And obviously they had a history before. He's always trying to take things away from Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I read somewhere in Indiana Jones backstory, in a Indiana Jones, novel, it said that Balak has always been trying to cheat Indy of everything that he wants to earn. Even when he was in school, in university, he was writing an article about something, and Balak takes it away from him. And that article went on to become the best school, and he got an A for it.
Oh, they knew each other at school, did they?
Yeah, they knew each other. And Marion, who was Indiana Jones's love interest, was also at university too. And this is how they met and how they hanged out together.
Okay.
Although you may notice that in early episodes,
I don't know about this, folks.
yeah, this part I will mention. In Indiana Jones, the Young Indiana Jones, Young Chronicles, there was a thought about bringing Marion into the picture, into one of the episodes, but they never put together the script, or they never bothered to assemble the cast to do that episode.
Anyway, let's roll on to actually this story.
I know, but there was a lot of unanswered episodes that never got aired in Young Indiana Jones: The Last
That's okay.
The Chronicles.
Let us go.
So anyway, proceed
this
on.
one. Where do you go up to?
So anyway, Indy put together his with Marion's help, we're able to find the medallion, and we're able to go and off to Egypt.
Well, the medallion actually is a headpiece that goes on a staff, which is going to be used in the map room to try to locate the burial place. Not the burial, the location of the buried treasure, which is the Ark of the Covenant. So yeah.
Well, we can call it treasure, obviously.
Well, it's a treasure to the Egyptians. It's a treasure to the archaeologist.
Yeah.
So it's a treasure.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, Indy's being funded by the government, and they're paying for his trip and everything.
Hey, not bad. Hey, a working holiday. That's not bad, hey?
Yes. And another thing about this medallion, it's not very mentioned in the movie, but it's mentioned in book written that it said on the medallion that you're not supposed to look or even touch the actual ark.
I don't know anything about the medallion saying that, because that was an Egyptian medallion thing. It wasn't a Hebrew medallion. I don't think it would have been written on it. But however,
then again, it was written in Hebrew. Something the writing on it was written in Hebrew.
Well, considering the Egyptians made it for their map room, and an Egyptian translator translated it, because ancient Egyptian, I find it very hard to believe.
Well, it just looks like it was spelled. It didn't look Egyptian to me. I mean, I know Egyptian, and I've written
I know Egyptian too. I've been to Egypt, and I've been to Israel.
Well, they didn't look like the figures I would have seen in the Egyptian.
I know. Irrespective.
Yes, well, that's my opinion. Anyway,
that's okay. Carry on.
So anyway, it says do not look upon the ark like as when it opens, and that's probably
and don't touch it.
Yeah, and don't touch it. Meaning, if anyone touches the surface of the actual contents of the ark, they'll drop dead.
Well, if you're not authorized to, I mean, I think it's actually mentioned in the Bible, the people who were supposed to look after the things of worship, the tents and the Ark of the Covenant, were the Levite tribe of Israel, and they were the tribe who became the rabbis and whatever, and they were the only ones allowed to touch it without being hurt.
Yeah, so it was mentioned in that scene where the old wise man guy talks about the details on the medallion, but it never, that part about not looking and not touching the ark never was mentioned. Which is very relevant information. Much later in the story, when you think about it.
Yeah, it does. But like I said, it's an Egyptian medallion, an Egyptian headpiece made for the map room. I can't imagine putting stuff on there that they really didn't believe in their faith. Anyway, let's move on.
Yes. So, Marion's kidnapped by none other than Belloc and the Nazi
and the
crowd.
Nazi guys. Yeah.
And Indy goes there, and he realizes at this. Much later in the film, obviously, Marion's been killed off, and he's a little glum about it. But it doesn't stop. But it doesn't stop him from proceeding on his journey.
Did Boulder go where he's been before? No.
Yes, so he goes to the map room. He gets his calculations right. And
he finds the map room.
And finds the map room.
He follows the trail to this dig. He meets a guy called Zala, one of his old friends in Egypt. He tells us there's a big dig going on in a place called Tanis. And so that's where the Nazis are. So Indiana Jones went there, and he subsequently finds the map room. Well, doesn't find it. It's already been exposed.
Yeah, it's already been exposed.
But he went in there for the right gear to find out where the right site was to dig for the Ark of the Covenant.
And right time of day, obviously.
Yay!
So when they got to this, when he'd done his calculations, he soon runs into Marion in one of the tents, who was no doubtly kidnapped and kept prisoner.
And they were going to torture her to try to get more information out of her, but she really doesn't know anything. I mean, these guys, I'm not knocking the Nazis or anything. They were soldiers. However, they were so far up themselves thinking they knew everything. They're dealing with archaeologists who actually know more than them, and they're trying to tell the archaeologists what to do.
Yeah, the Hitler in this, where in one scene where
we don't see him.
Where one of his general guys tells him the Hitler is getting impatient, all that stuff, and he's not a patient man, all that stuff, and
he's stamping his tiny little feet back in Hamburg or
Yes, or
whatever.
whatever. But Balak tells them that he didn't make promises. He thought he had calculations, but those calculations could be
Erroneous. Erroneous? That's a good word.
yes.
Excuse me.
And he said he made no promises that they'll get
Yes,
it done in time.
He said archaeology is not an exact science. You only go by snippets of information, so they're not necessarily going to be totally accurate. You can't just pick it up and say, "Oh, look, there it is." X does not mark the spot.
Yeah, despite what Balak says, he does lay down some interesting facts there considering that he's a bad person, but he knows when to give us some good information about this. So anyway, we continue on. Indy finds the right spot to dig.
He digs.
And he digs and digs and digs and digs.
I've got a question for that
and
one too.
in that scene, while they're digging, Indy changed it from his Arabian clothing to his
he had
ordinary
Arab robes
clothing.
over his normal clothes so he could blend in.
Yes.
Why would you take the Arab clothes off and stick out like, hey, I'm wearing a nice pair of trousers, a shirt, and a leather jacket and a hat? Hello?
Not many wear leather jackets, not in that hot Sahara.
Yeah, but the point still remains is you got a bunch of Arabs over there in their gear, and you got a European dress guy next to him.
Yes.
Hello? It wouldn't be hard to find him.
Yeah, anyway, so Indy and his group of diggers, they soon hit
I got a question here.
The tomb.
If all the diggers were employed or rounded up by the Nazis and working on their dig, where did he get his diggers from?
I imagine Zala kind of
Snuck them away?
con them away to
Snuck them away?
and promise to
They just
make sure
appeared.
that they're well provided with the right sort of money.
Yeah, well, we got the
Considering
impression the Nazis weren't going to pay them in the end. That's a gut feeling we got.
Yeah,
but,
and and according to Zala, they're paying tuppence.
not a lot, a pittance, not tuppence, a pittance.
Okay,
Yeah.
pittance.
Yeah, 2/10 of bugger all,
Yeah, or nuts for their job. So anyway, they dig and dig, and then they soon come across the entrance to the possible Ark's
They
tomb.
take this big slab off the top of this room and down
Below.
inside. It's a snake pit
Yes.
with the Ark of the Covenant in the middle.
Yeah, just so you guys know, historically, I found out that in some tombs that being looked over, they would often have snakes and other reptiles hovering inside the tombs.
Not often,
Sometimes.
because normally they're reasonably sealed and underground, and I can't see too many snakes, scarab beetles, other things going there if there's no food in there.
Good point.
There's no reason to actually go in there. They would starve.
No doubt.
You'd have mummified snakes all over the place.
No, maybe, but maybe they may eat the mummified remains.
What, 3,000 years ago? It'd be a bit stale by now, wouldn't you think?
I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, they're
However, there was a hole in the wall.
true.
Ah.
Yeah. So anyway, as we were saying, our intrepid explorer continues on, and he freaks out when he sees a snake, saying, "Snakes! Why the hell does it have to be
Indiana
snakes?"
Jones hates snakes.
Yeah, and this is an interesting fact. I found out the reason they made Indy scared of snakes is to make him a little bit more vulnerable to fear.
He wasn't supposed to be your action hero type guy. I'm not afraid of anything. He's technically he is a university lecturer who goes out on archaeological digs and other things. Looking for items of interest from antiquities and brings about the university or the museums.
Yes.
And that's what he was. But he obviously got into a lot of strife in different places, such as this movie. And it's a normal guy.
Yeah, so it's I guess in Steven Spielberg's case, he wanted to make his character a little bit vulnerable to something scary. Some people out there, I mean, in so many heroes' cases, most of them they're not afraid of anything.
Yeah, but you look at the X-Men and all those sorts of things like that. All those action hero guys, they seem to be afraid of nothing, and they don't get beaten up. They get beaten up. They just need a band-aid. That's about as far as it goes.
Yeah.
But Indiana Jones gets beaten up pretty severely in this by some big German guy, and he can't hardly stand up in the end.
Yeah, he's practically had a lot of maintenance work on him.
He won the fight by default.
Anyway, Marion, of course, gets attached to Belloc for a while, just in order to get away.
And Belloc's not really a nasty guy. He just not playing
by the rules.
He's just another guy who's keen on digging up old things and collecting and stuff.
Yeah, and imagine most of the stuff he collects, he ends up selling on the black market.
I think he might keep some.
He may keep some.
Choosing bits himself. He might sell some. And to make some money for himself.
And imagine, I think I read in the book that he may sell some of the bits and pieces to wealthy, respectable collectors.
Yeah, so he gets money.
Make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Which kind of fits into when Indy says that he was hoping to get a golden idol way at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, right at the beginning of the movie, yeah.
And he figured that it was going to be sold in Marrakesh. And that leads us to Indy wanting to a lot of money in order to pursue that item.
Nothing happened to that.
I remember a fandom friend.
No, in this movie, he said, "I want to go to Marrakesh," and then nothing happened then because those guys from the government came to him and say, "We want you to go and do this other bit." So he actually didn't actually go after him, but Belloc was at the other place anyway. Isn't that funny? What a small world.
Yes. So anyway, as our story progresses, Belloc gets seriously drunk in one scene, and Marion was about to make her daring escape, but gets tackled by an evil Russian, evil German guy.
Yeah, the guy from the SS who did not have much of a sense of humour, did he? No. He was going to beat the snot out of him, to get some information. I don't know about beat the snot out of him. He was going to.
He was very sinister.
He was going to torture before in the beginning of the movie.
True.
He was going to burn a face of hot poker out of a fireplace. So I think he would be the type of guy to beat her until she died if she didn't get the information.
Yes, and soon enough, Belloc discovers the Ark being pulled out of the tomb, and they wake the men, and they start.
And they steal it from Indiana Jones.
Yes,
bugger.
I love. Now this is a bit of dialogue I really like in the movie where he says, "What a pity that you have to be left in such a awful place. You're going to be a permanent resident of this archaeological find."
He leaves him in the snake pit there before he seals him up.
He says,
"Maybe in 1,000 years, you'll be worth something."
And then Indy laughs and says,
"Hey, son of a bitch." Yeah. Whatever. And they get sealed off there, and everyone thinks that's the end of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, and then Marion gets thrown into the pit of snakes with him.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to die in pain, you need a friend.
Yes, I think that's what the general had in mind, or captain. I'm not sure if he's a captain or general. I'm not sure. I could be wrong.
It wouldn't be a general. It would have been something below that, probably.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah. Otherwise, I don't think generals would go that far out to.
Well, I don't know the military rank. You have some as a privates, and you have corporals and lieutenants, and I don't know what the German army has.
Yes, so anyway,
let's say he's an officer.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, he tells them that he didn't care much about the woman and just says that she's no use to us. We have our prize. Let's close up this tomb and get the heck out of here.
And anyway, Indiana Jones and the nice lady tackle the snake problem down there and get out the back door. They found a way out. I won't go into it too much, but they had to battle the snakes, a few things, and they knocked a block of
statue over.
Knocked a statue over, break through a wall, and then they found I wouldn't say ventilation hole, but a loose rock or some stone, and they pushed that away, and they got out of the. Now the part that bugs me, that was totally exposed. How come nobody else saw it when they're digging?
Good point, Mike. But that was interesting, and I especially like that when my friend Eric and Chris did their version of it. That this scene that with the airplane scene where they were loading the Ark on board of that thing, of that ship plane. That scene, they had to wait for so many years to create that particular scene to complete their film.
Yeah, because kids they couldn't afford an aeroplane.
Yeah, and
can we get back onto this movie? We can talk about them later.
But it was an awesome bit, and while so many filmmakers I've talked to about fandoms, they keep saying no one will put funds into a fandom, but well, as long as you don't, you know, be the
It wasn't made as commercial venture. It was made as a tribute movie,
yes,
and they wanted some money so many years later to make the scenes that they couldn't make when they were kids.
yeah,
And the people
good
who had
point.
already been watching them, following them, and say, "Hey, this is great," threw some money towards it, and they might have got some businesses involved as well, and
Yeah,
they made
most
enough to
likely.
make a prop aeroplane up. And what else was it? Was this a prop aeroplane?
A proper aeroplane
Was there anything else?
and some new actor faces to
Oh
work
yeah,
in
but just
on
that
set.
bit there. Because then the guy that played in that wasn't he in Jurassic Park or something or Jurassic
Yeah,
World?
Rob Fuller.
Yeah, he played the Nazi guy fighting Indiana Jones, wasn't he?
Yeah,
And he's played a bit in
an extra soldier extra in
Jurassic World.
Jurassic World.
Yeah, so they spare no expense, get the best.
Quite right.
Hey.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, as we go, that was probably one of my favorite fight scenes in that story, where they beat the heck out of that very tall
Yeah,
German
but
guy.
wait a minute. Indiana Jones was losing the fight,
Yes.
and he was sitting on the ground there, and the plane was actually, the chocks were taken away to wheels. The plane was moving, and it's sort of pivoting, and came around, and the propeller was coming up behind the big German guy, and he turned around and got his face sliced and diced. So that's how Indiana Jones actually won the fight.
And that's one of the reasons why the kids couldn't do that years ago, because fear of maybe.
Well, how did it make the plane?
Yeah. Well, not to mention, how would you explode it without causing a little bit of problems?
Well, they didn't have After Effects back in those days, did they?
No.
Anyway, irrespective.
So irrespective.
Anyway.
So irrespective, then the Germans decide to load the Ark onto a truck in order to get it away.
And they, to go somewhere.
Yes, and this is where my other favorite scene comes into it, where Indy's going to chase after them on his horse and try to
Giddy
get
up, horsey.
And
Yeah.
the interesting part in this story is when all of the slaves that the Nazis hired are pissed, kind of annoyed that they're not being paid.
You're going to say pissed off. That's not very nice. You didn't say that on these YouTubes. Kitty's not listening.
Yeah, anyway, they looked very angry and they were pushing against the Nazis like...
Yeah, they thought, you guys are going to run off without
Yeah.
paying us.
Yeah.
You mongrels, man.
Yes. Anyway, they were a little upset, and when they see Indiana Jones riding over the horizon, they are all jumping up and looking and watching up in surprise.
We haven't been paid. Yeah.
Yes, but they watch in anticipation of what's happening, and
Anyway, we won't talk about too much of this chase scene because let's go on to the submarine and the other bits.
I want to
whatever.
get to the final.
Okay,
bit where
talk about the
after
chase
Indy
scene.
gets the Ark and gets on the truck, he soon pushes Belloc's car off the road.
Off the road.
And then he heads to the town, and the villagers, the townspeople there, are able to hide the truck and the Ark, and in
Stuff.
yeah. And
Yeah.
didn't we discuss how this happened?
Well, we spent about where that.
Yeah, like how did the townspeople knew that they needed help?
Well, you said
Indy?
Zala made his way back there, but how would Indiana Jones know what was going on in that town, and how would Zala know that Indiana Jones was going to be driving a truck in there?
I don't know.
Aha. Yeah.
I don't know, but the people there were
That was good. It was good.
kind enough to assist and pretend it was market day there.
It was market day, sort of, but they had a hole in the wall type thingy there. They dropped a curtain down there and a marquee and put a stall in front of it. No one knew where the truck went to. A really nice trick for the movie. It was really good. It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And now we move on to the boat scene, which is probably one of my very favourite romantic scenes.
I've got a question.
Yes, what's
And
that?
I might have missed something in my brain here at the moment. Indiana Jones had the truck.
Yes.
The Ark of the Covenant was in the truck.
Yes.
What was the next scene? Oh, the boat.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right, the boat. Yeah.
The
Sorry,
boat.
I just had a memory lapse. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
we went to a dock in Cairo or somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm with
Yeah, soon. So, Sala was organised transport for Indy, Marion, and the Ark.
Yeah.
And, of course, everything looks peachy.
you. Yeah, the Ark's put on the boat. Indiana Jones and Marion put on the boat, and they get away. And we won't go into the bedroom scene.
I
We
did
think
like
they
that.
had sex that night. Yeah, like they had a history before, but at the beginning of the movie, when they came across each other again, she hated him because I think he seduced her when she was 16 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, had a bit of a fling, and then they had a bit of a breakup and stuff, and left her
Yeah.
as a what's the word, a depressed young female. Or,
And Ravenwood, Indy's teacher,
didn't want to talk to him anymore.
Didn't want anything to do with him.
But anyway, they came back together, and after a little adventure over the past couple of days, a week or two, she's warming to him again, saying he's really a nice guy, and he did save me and stuff.
Yeah.
So we didn't actually see anything, but it was implied they had sex and not happy families again.
That scene and Chris and Eric's scene.
Look, stop going to.
Well, I do think it was kind of romantic. In the book, it said that was the first time Chris ever got kissed.
Okay, Chris, the fan adaptation. Chris was only probably at, 14, 15?
Well, I think 13. And
no, he wasn't. I think he was 14 or 15. And she was a couple of years older than him.
Yeah.
She was rather cute, actually. I can't remember her name, but they had to Angela. And they had to do a bit of a love scene there, just a kiss and everything. And I think it was the first time Chris actually kissed a girl seriously.
Yes.
I'm not a peck on the cheeks or anything, a real kiss. And I don't know how many takes they had.
Yeah, I think they did it quite a few.
Take 23. Chris, will you stop giggling? No.
Well, there was, when they did, I think I wasn't sure which take, but I read in the book, it said that when they did the kiss scene on all that, and while Eric is saying, okay, cut, but they kept kissing, and then he says, okay, cut. And they still keep kissing. And after a final time, he says, "Okay, cut. Okay, stop it. You pull them apart, or pour some water on them, or something."
The part that makes me, or comes to mind, I must ask the question: who was kissing who? Was he kissing her, or was she kissing him? Or was just a mutual thing happening? It looks pretty good for kids.
So. Yeah, I imagine.
Anyway, let's get away from this bit.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've drifted
get back to the real movie.
I know, but forgive me, guys. I like to go back to
we like Chris and Eric's
version because it's a lot of fun.
That's
and
great.
It's kind of great watching these kids put together such a film.
Anyway, let's get on to this one.
Okay, Mike.
We can talk about them later.
Sorry, guys, again. So anyway,
I'll go to bed.
After a night of gosh knows what, the next morning, we see the Nazis in their submarine who are planning to board the ship.
Because they knew where Indiana Jones had gone to.
How he knew, we'll never know.
I know, someone let the cat out of the bag.
Maybe.
Oh, no, sorry, someone let the Sphinx out of the bag.
Who knows? Maybe maybe they had spies.
Yeah, somebody on a dock.
Hiding in the shadows.
Oh, no, just somebody at the dock somewhere. I said, we're looking for someone. Oh, well, there's a guy and a man, a girl and a man and a lady got in this boat and had a thing there, and they went in that boat and they tracked them.
Yeah. And it was not too difficult. Yeah. It's a ordinary boat.
Well, yes, an ordinary boat. Yeah, not a little boat or not a big boat. I mean,
just an ordinary tanker type of boat.
Yes. Well, not cargo, small cargo boat. Yeah, run by pirates.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, only the best will do.
Yes. Anyway, they come there and they say, "We're taking this ark," and of course the captain says that to lead them, Marion and
leave the girls. And said, "Fetch a nice price where we're going."
Yeah, and said he killed Indy and all that stuff, and Indy's already hiding away in the hold somewhere.
Yeah, he's hiding. And then the Nazis go back to the submarine, and Indiana Jones must be a sterling swimmer. He's fully clothed, whip and everything, leather jacket, swum to the submarine, which must have been 100 metres away.
Yeah, in the story, just so you guys know, in the deleted scene, he was sort of attached to the what do they call it? The periscope.
Oh yeah, that thing.
And I don't know why they never filmed that bit because, to be honest, how he would have survived on top of it is beyond me.
Well, so I don't know too much about submarines. I was having a bit of think when we watched the movie that normally submarines travel underwater because that's what they're for. But I think they might travel faster on top of the water because there's less resistance.
Yeah, that's what Indy said.
So they might have just stayed afloat and drove to this island base for the submarine, which might not have been too far away, so I had no reason to go underwater.
Yeah, well, that was probably what was going through Indy's mind.
Well, I'm
but
glad
then
it didn't, otherwise
but
it's been a
then
very
he
short
noticed
movie.
the submarine sinking into the water, and he has
Glug,
to
glug, 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 glug.
seek higher ground, so to
Well,
speak.
yeah, but if they go down to like 100 metres, he'd be underwater, he'd be drowning, he'd be shark bait.
Yes,
Yeah.
true.
And
But
there'd
that's
be
why he's
and there'd
hanging
be
on
no
to
movie.
the periscope at the top.
And hold your breath for an awfully long time.
Well, technically, that was the only part that just didn't sink into the water.
Nah, they normally, if they do go on top of the, they didn't go right down. I think the decks were still visible, so I think they just must have gone on top of the water.
Anyway, as was...
Oh, by the way, they actually used a real submarine here and in the next bit of it, and that was actually borrowed from another film that Spoke were doing about the same time. So that's a bit of trivia, and where they actually go to in a minute to the submarine base, that was a real submarine base left over from the Second World War.
That is cool.
Bit of trivia for you folks.
Very cool trivia. Thank you, Mark. So anyway, they get to the place. Indy tries to steal himself a uniform,
Which he gets sort of
which
second
is
time round.
2 sizes too small.
Yeah.
And then he meets up with another soldier, and he beats the crap out of him.
And he gets his clothes.
He got his clothes, apart from a shirt that didn't really fit him.
Well, a bit snug, but that's okay.
But other than that,
he was rather buff.
Other
wasn't
than that, he got the jacket and the pants, which
his
is
little
all
hat
he
and his
needs.
boots. He looked very nice.
Yes, and no one will notice him.
He blended in quite nicely.
Yes, and of course, when we do see Marion with Balak, we see that there's there's nothing going on there. Like, somehow I think he's displeased with her for gosh knows reasons. Maybe she refused him. Maybe she slapped him and told him to know where to go.
I don't know, but there was a bit of a thing. He was going to protect her a little bit, but he wasn't going to protect her a lot. So yeah, maybe the honeymoon was over.
Yeah, maybe his hope of getting something out of her was going to be nah. It's pretty obviously she's set her cap for Indy, and that's who she prefers.
Yeah. Now.
Yeah,
we went to submarine base, which is where they're going to open up the Ark of the Covenant. So now the Belloc and the Nazis are taken up to a high place on the island.
Yes.
Where they're going to do a Hebrew ritual to see if they could activate
the power
of this box. Which I don't recall any scripture saying there's anything like this, but it works good for the movie.
I think that the more to the point is that they want to look at the sacred pieces to see for themselves if they're there in there.
Yeah. But Balak said something earlier in the movie. He said, it's something special. It's a transmitter for talking to God. It mustn't be a Catholic Christian or anything, or even a Hebrew, because it wasn't that. It was a religious icon which represented their faith. So,
but then again,
he wasn't a very good archaeologist, was he?
But then again, on several occasions, Moses probably had several conversations near the ark, and most of the time it was with God in him.
Praying to God, and if he was a Christian, he would know you can pray to God anywhere. You wouldn't need the box.
And not to mention, the ark traveled with them, and the ark was sort of a way for God in his way to keep an eye on the Hebrews.
Well, no, actually, I think I've said earlier in the movie, and I think it was taken out of the Bible as well, that if they had the Ark of the Covenant with them, and they come across enemies, and they had to fight them, they would always win.
Yeah, of course.
And that was the base of this, because if the Nazis got it and they had it with their army, then that would make the Nazi army win their battles. Yeah, you're invincible. Invincible. That's a good word for it.
Yes.
I think they use that in the movie.
So they go up to the hills, and no doubt Indy's following closely behind, and he, in a loose sly capacity, he threatens Balak and says, "I'm going to blow up the ark if you don't give me back my girlfriend."
Well, sorta. I think he was teasing him, but he knew that Balak.
Yeah. And Balak knew right away that Indy was a bad poker player doing this.
Yeah, and he called his bluff, and Balak won again.
Yes.
Gee.
Well, he did lay down that he did say, "Fine, blow it up."
Yeah, but he bluffed him.
And Indy was not really feeling composed to do that sort of thing.
Yes, yeah, damn, and so I think Belloc called his bluff, and
Yes.
Belloc won yet again.
Yes.
But wait, they get up to the high place, they start the ceremony.
And of course, it did mention in the story that they were going to attempt to shoot Indy and kill him right there and there before the ritual began. But Balak says, "Wait, just let him live, so I could show off this
How
incredible."
clever I am, and that you lost again and I won, sort of thing.
Yes,
that
sort of.
thing.
They can execute Indy
Yeah, he wants
beforehand.
to see what he's missing out on. Yeah.
Yes. So,
However,
however,
they start the ritual.
yes, and
They take the lid off the box.
yes, and just so you know, Balak is wearing sort of
Some
similar
Hebrew robes.
even though he's not. I don't think he's Hebrew, to be honest, or Jewish.
No, it is. It's
kinda.
Jewish. Now wait a minute. He's dressed as an Israelite Cohen Gadol, whatever that is.
I think
Which I'll believe like a rabbi or
I
something.
think that
or
we
a
one of the
yeah,
Jewish priests
yeah,
that
yeah,
were.
yeah. And he was saying some Hebrew words. And they take the lid off the box, and it's full of sand. And everyone thinks, "Oh, you stuffed up," but all of a sudden things start changing.
Yeah, like a lot of there were some flashlights or light bulbs that were lighting the area began popping like.
and the generator starts to short circuit and blow itself up.
Yeah,
and then you see this mist forming inside the box and like swirling out in space, sort of thing.
Yeah, and
all of a
thunder,
sudden-
lightning.
Yeah, and then mist starts coming out of the box.
Yeah, a lot of
then
spirits.
some spirits come out of the
zoom
box,
across
and
the,
they're beautiful. They start going around everybody.
Yeah, except Indy, his being the smart one in this, he remembers the
smart.
wise man said to Marion, "Don't look at the ark. Shut your eyes and don't look until I tell you."
Yeah, and anyway, what happens is all these pretty things come out, and they're going, "Oh, this is beautiful." All of a sudden, all these beautiful
they
spirity things
turn
into
evil.
ghouls.
Yes.
Horrible, ugly things.
Yeah.
And then they start killing all the Nazi soldiers and Belloc. Everyone gets killed.
Except for Indy and Marion.
Exactly right, because they're the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
See, if you're looking at it from the spiritual part, God and everything, God hates evil, obviously, and he killed all the evil people there. So everybody there was killed except for the two good people.
Yeah, but
how did they get home?
Well, bear in mind, before we get to that, Mike, bear in mind, it says in the Bible that it's death for anyone to look at God's face. Meaning that they just saw just a sample of God's power and God's appearance and God's powers, which means you're just as anyone who's vulnerable to God's presence will be zapped to oblivion.
I would take it slightly different way. I'd say that because their hearts weren't pure and they wanted to do evil things with it, don't mess around with something you don't know about.
But that's another thing.
Yeah.
I remember what I said earlier in this movie that they were going to mention that not to look upon the ark and all that stuff. It could mean that anyone is vulnerable to the ark, meaning even if you're a good person with a good heart, you most likely end up with the same fate as the Nazis.
But if Indiana Jones looked up out of idle curiosity, that would mean he wasn't pure of heart.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to close my eyes. I'll catch a quick look to see what. Ooh, that's interesting, isn't it? That so he's not pure of heart then.
Yeah, well, it's
he would be faithful to himself in his quest.
Yeah. Anyway, so God's power destroyed the Nazis and everything around them.
Now
and
you start to wondering what happened to the guys on the submarine.
I like to think everyone from the Nazi. Nazi submarine and all the other.
All died too,
they
maybe.
all came there to take a peek at this ark. Just to see what it's like.
I repeat, how did they get off the island? They didn't actually show how you got off the island.
I don't know. Maybe
they next shot them back at the university.
Maybe they contacted
on the radio, maybe
on the radio to the Americans to pick them up that way. That's how I think.
That's a possibility.
They do have Morse code and
I know,
stuff, and
but
it's well known.
if he's not a navigator, how would you tell him what island they're on?
Good question. But then again,
Sorry, George.
but then again, we found out that in Young Indiana Jones, he was in the army for a bit, so he may have known.
He might have known a bit about navigation.
Yeah.
Not even though army guys don't do navigation, he might have been He might have figured out from their charts.
Yeah.
In the chart room where they might have been. That's a good point. Okay, sorry, George, you're probably okay then.
Yes, so
won't
Marion
Stephen,
and
no.
Indy return back to the States where they're richly rewarded by the money that they were promised.
Oh, Marion got paid well, probably.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Indy's told by the superior guys that they're going to take the government guys are going to take the Ark away to
A special place.
And
get top people looking at it to investigate it and study it and
this
whatever.
is where I think this translation, when Indy says who, and we have a long pause, and then the guy says top men,
Which
meaning
means
none of your business.
none of your business, because Indiana Jones would be one of the top men.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the whole point is that they don't intentionally want to research it or give it to a museum. They want to lock it away
in a special secret compound thingy warehouse.
Yeah. Now tell me this final scene that you mentioned earlier, Mike.
All right. The original movie, when they were putting it together, the very, very last scene of the movie after Indiana Jones and Marion leave the government guys, I think it was going to end about there, or had a slightly different ending. But I think George Lucas's wife said, hey, there should be some sort of closure or something going on with Indiana Jones and Marion. So they went back and did a bit more filming and made a scene with them coming out of the university or whatever, and warming to each other and going off to have a drink together. Which like they had a relationship blooming.
Yes.
You'd feel that. But that wasn't going to be in the original movie. But I think it was George Lucas' wife. I don't think Stephen's wife. I think it was George's wife suggested they add something to close the relationship part off for the movie.
Yes. I often talk to you guys about movies with inappropriate closes. Yeah. And this one is pretty much... And this was a good closure.
Yeah, I mean, you have your climax and you have your anti-climax, but if it dropped off just there, it would have been a bit...
Pear-shaped.
No, not pear-shaped. It would have been so... You say it needs something else, and that was the something else it needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like in the Indiana Jones Last Crusade. It could have finished off where it finished off a bit...
where they just escaped the M2.
And run away and said, that's it, finished. Or when the credits came off, they were riding off in the sunset. Yeah, three of them?
Four
of them riding off on horses or camels or whatever, riding off in the sunset. Did you need that? Yeah, it was a good ending.
A good closure.
We escaped and we're off going there, riding off in the sunset, heroes of the day, and that was good closure for a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, our heroes walk off in getting a drink,
and she gave that sort of a sexy smile. Would you say? So
a sexy smile.
I think she had plans for the evening.
Yeah, she says, "Come on, I'll buy you a drink."
Remember,
a drink.
I think
she even flicks his hat.
Come on.
And
she says, you give them the come on. I think they're going to go out for drinkies, have a meal, and play the
footsie game.
The horizontal mumbo all night long. No.
So much later on, we see the Ark being put into a box, nails down on it, and they're going to be putting it in a bunch of other boxes that look like exactly the same, probably, except for a few differences.
Yeah. Now, we don't want to go on too much longer, but we will talk a little bit about development and whatever. And the idea of Indiana Jones and even Star Wars, the idea was to make it a bit like the old serials they used to have in the theatres back in the 40s and 50s and whatever. So the story style was actually written to be an old style, like we have the hero there and the girl and whatever, and the nasty guys, a very simple storyline. And it wasn't a simple storyline, but it wasn't a naive storyline. It was a good storyline for this day and age, even today. But they wanted to keep that thing going. And having said that, when you look at the filming side, they kept the filming down to about 3 or 4 takes per scene instead of doing 20 or 30. Yeah, they didn't care. It was a little bit rough. The idea was the old serials used to be a little bit rough. And if there's a problem with it, they just run with it or just edit it out or whatever. And I think for what they did, say 4 takes, and you made your movie last year, and with your editing and post editing now, and your head of, director of photography, he was working on about 4 takes for a lot of those scenes.
Roughly, yes.
And he worked really hard making it work. And I reckon, really, if you got good actors, good scenes set up, everything's good, you don't need to do a million takes for a scene. It just is a waste of time. And they had a limited budget of about, 18,000? And considering they were filming in England, Tunisia, but four different locations, there would have been 4 units going here probably. Yeah, it just goes on and on and on. You can't stretch the budget until it snaps. So yeah, for what they did, I reckon the limited takes with Steven Spielberg driving it as a director. No, Steven Spielberg, I wouldn't say he's underrated because, I mean, people know exactly what Steven can do. He's done Close Encounters, he's done this, he's done lots of other movies.
The Jaws and
Jaws,
stuff.
he's a really good director. I'm wrapped in what Steven does. And
Yeah,
George
I'm
can
blind.
write a nice story. And it comes together.
Yeah, it does have it. No, they know how to wrap up a good story and write a good plot and film it all.
Certainly.
This is another thing I should bring up. Did you know, guys, that that Harrison Ford wasn't their
First choice?
First choice.
Okay, who was that?
Well, actually, it was gonna be their first choice because, but Harrison Ford was worried that he's gonna be, he'll be always remembered for his current roles,
being typecast.
as Indiana Jones or Han Solo, and people would continue thinking of him in those roles.
I'm just an action hero sort of guy in a pretty face. So
Yes, and even though I've seen him in 1,000 roles, I've seen him as president. I've seen him playing a detective in Blade Runner.
He did,
and I've seen him in a number of other roles. I care to name.
He's quite good. Yeah, I
and
like him.
I don't necessarily think of him as always, Indiana Jones or Han Solo. So often. I just think of them. Those roles are pretty good for him, and they work really well for him. So technically, he made the roles.
Yeah. But actually, a bit of trivia here. I think they started writing this idea in 1973, and it got put in the back burner because I think the writer, co-writer Kaufman, had to go and do another movie and direct it. So the other co-writer was the director. And that got put in the back burner, and that got picked up again in 1977, I think.
Also, guys, they might be looking at making an Indiana Jones 5 movie, and I don't know very much about it, but I know for a fact that Steven Spielberg is no longer going to be directing it.
He's tired of doing it, he doesn't want to do another one. But the point is, who do you think would make a good Indiana Jones? Chris Pratt. He's our favourite.
But I think Harrison Ford wants to come back for the final.
He might come back as his dad.
Maybe.
He'd just do a role reversal.
Who knows?
Or, I mean, you can't have Harrison Ford running around like he has done in the previous movies.
And
he's getting old. Nothing against Harrison Ford, but you get to the stage where it can become an embarrassment.
Yeah, if it was like a, what do they call it? A prequel. Maybe we can get away with getting Chris Pratt to play him.
Chris Pratt's got that. How do you put it? That action hero, nice guy, not totally polished sort of look about him. Similar Harrison Ford.
I think I remember one scene from the new Jurassic World sequel movie. There was a scene where he's being. Well, during the volcano eruption, he's running just like Indiana Jones away from danger, just like in those.
Did he ever say, "I've got a bad feeling about this"? No, he didn't. No.
There are some interesting scenes there that make him look like he's going to move on to being the next Indiana Jones, for all I know.
Yeah, actually, the character of Indiana Jones was based a little bit on Humphrey Bogart. In The Treasure of Sierra Madre. I mean, he was a rough guy, hard drinking, but that similar personality.
Cool.
Um,
And the
yeah.
costume came from Charlton Heston.
Yeah, he was in a movie.
He was playing in a movie where a circus movie.
It wasn't Secret of the Incas as well.
I'm not sure, but I know it was a circus movie, and he wore a leather jacket and a brown hat in that one, and a similar outfit. So I guess that's where George Lucas and his team came up with that costume. Which,
but the character itself, but the Secret of the Incas with Harrison, Charlton Heston was also part of the what do you call it? Defining the character of Indiana Jones. And let's get back to the name. The original name was not going to be Indiana Jones. It was going to be Indiana Smith.
Yeah.
And that didn't really work. It just does not sound
just
right.
so you guys know, the name Indiana Jones came from actually George Lucas's dog.
Whose name was Indiana, who was a very nice dog.
Yes. Can you imagine that, guys? And that's probably came up with the idea for Last Crusades, where they came up with the idea for Indiana dogs.
The Last Crusade, but Crystal Skull, where we have later on, Harrison Ford has a son. His nickname is Mutt, another name for a dog. Now, hello, it's so much tongue-in-cheek stuff.
Yeah, originally in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, in the TV series, it was originally Indiana Jones was going to have a daughter, not a son.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, but they decided to go with do the same thing with Indy having a hard time with his son, even though he didn't know he had a son at the time. But he soon warmed up to the idea of the thought of having a son who's a bit of a outsider or
a bit of a naughty boy.
Or a bit of a naughty boy.
But there was
I wonder where he got that from his mother.
Another little thing. There were a couple of things, some scenes they were going to put into this movie. Which they didn't use, and it showed up in the next movie.
That's true.
That one where he's in that nightclub and he's hiding behind this rolling gong going across the floor. That was supposed to be in this movie, but they trimmed things down a bit to
that fits.
Well, yeah, to make it work. So they say that's a good idea. We can use that trick for the next movie.
Yeah,
which they did.
I don't know if this was in the movie, but when he was doing the fight scene with the guy wearing the black turban and the black outfit, he had Harrison Ford had diarrhea.
I don't have diarrhea. He just wasn't feeling well.
He wasn't feeling well, so
because they were in a bad area where you're getting problems with food poisoning and stuff.
They had to cut the scene down a bit in that scene.
So they said instead of having the fight, so he said, "Why don't you just shoot him?" So that's a good idea. So he's turning around, getting ready like there's going to be a fight, and just turn around, so bang. So there, taking care of that. See you later. Probably went to the toilet.
Yeah, or whatever. So at the time.
Yeah.
It was going to probably be an interesting fight scene with the whip, maybe. I'm not sure. But I think it kind of works better that he just shoots the bugger and just heads on to his next adventure. That kind of worked out.
Now, just two things I want to say. The snakes and the spiders. In the beginning, the spiders, they go into this tomb to get something right at the beginning. The spiders were non-poisonous spiders. They were a Mexican species of tarantulas, which are commonly kept as pets. Believe it or not, who would have a spider as a pet?
I don't know. People with bizarre personalities.
But the Addams family maybe, but
Wednesday Addams.
Yeah, she would. Oh my God, a pet spider. But they look so good, and look, he's covered in spiders. But they won't bite you. Yeah. Or if they do, they got a little mouth and won't hurt. There's just maybe a nip. That's about as far as it goes. But the snakes in the snake pit. Now,
that's another story.
Now, when they went in there, if you watch closely, some of the snakes aren't moving because they did have some rubber snakes in there. No, fair enough. You can't have all those snakes. You have to pay extra money for extra snakes. Now, but some of the other ones are actually a form of legless lizard. I don't know what their name, but they're non-poisonous and won't hurt you. And they had a couple of real snakes thrown in for the clothes they worked, like the cobras. Apart from that, it was just everyone was safe.
Yeah, another thing about this, I should say, did you guys know that Harrison Ford, that there's a bit of a cut or scar on his chin, And that came from when he was handling some snakes one time, and one of the snakes kind of
There was a snake?
hit him, kind of bit him
I
there.
know we got a bite. Was it a snake?
Yeah, it was a snake.
Sure.
Positive.
Okay, I can't remember. I
Yeah,
knew we got,
and-
but didn't that happen when he was a camp master or something?
Yeah,
or other?
camp master,
He's-
and
they
before
have
he
these
became acting.
school camps or your whole day camps for kids, in America. And he was a camp leader or group leader or whatever, and he got something or other, maybe a snake, bit him on the chin. And actually, in the Last Crusade, at the beginning of the movie, when he's playing, there's a role of young Indiana Jones.
Yes.
They explain that mark on his chin where he got hit by a whip he cracked.
Yeah, meaning.
Interesting,
yeah,
eh?
Yeah,
So
hit by the tip of the whip.
yeah, they put a tip of whip. So it actually brought his scar into the storyline.
Yeah, well,
it
kind of
isn't it?
fits in.
Yeah.
I mean, giving it the continuing we discussed earlier.
Yeah. But anyway, this is dragging on considerably.
Okay,
Yes.
so do you want to rate this movie now?
Well, do you want to talk about Kristen Eric's a bit more or anybody else's? Or
Yeah, I think we could do
just
that.
a little bit, just a
Yes,
couple minutes. Because they did a good job and all the accolades to all the
Yeah.
other people as
Yeah,
well.
guys, Eric and Chris, they were probably the first kids who started working on a bit of a fandom of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, and they
Well, a
started
lot of
something,
kids
yeah.
probably their age were either fantasizing and dreaming about going off to university to study filmmaking. They decided to do it right there in their
kids, yeah,
backyard.
and- yeah.
Well, not in the backyard.
Well,
just
they did more under the house, local quarry, different places in the local area, the back lanes behind the shops.
Yeah, yeah.
And they did I don't know how to put it. For kids with no budget and using all their friends and whatever, for kids with no skills or experience, they made a damn fine movie. And it's surprising that Chris and Eric didn't go into movie, the media, as directors, actors, producers, anything. They just didn't. They went in their own different ways and just did ordinary jobs.
Well, they probably got tired of filmmaking and decided to do something that's
Makes more money.
well, maybe something different, something.
Well, they didn't get paid much money for it. No.
True. But it was not about the money.
They did out of love.
They did have love
yeah.
for the fandoms.
Yeah.
To influence young
So,
people to get
is
into this.
a way to get a copy of this?
Yes, there is. I have a website here that Eric kindly has given me permission to mention. So it's called Zala Detour.com.
Do you want me to spell it to them?
Yeah.
Spell it to them when you say, I'll do it for you. Now, it's Zala, like Eric Zala, his last name, ZALA Detour, like in going down the road, .com/store, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Is it a backslash or forward slash? Forward slash. Yeah. Forward slash. Yeah. And you should be able to get a copy of that. It's not the greatest quality because it was really done on old VHS tape, and it's probably second, third, fourth
Yeah.
generation. So some of the quality is not bad. They relied on the audio probably from the camera, not overhead, boom mics, and everything else. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
It was a fan-made movie
Yeah.
by kids, but it's worth looking
Yeah.
at and buying.
It shows a lot
Yeah.
of love behind
Yeah.
it.
But I'll add to this further that like I said earlier, that there are a lot of Indiana Jones type fandom movies or short features done by a lot of well-meaning people, and we've got a collection of about a dozen or
Yeah, just half a dozen.
and they're really, really, really
Yeah.
good. Some of them are kids, some are a bit more middle-aged sort of guys, but they're all being given the treatment. Some of those called Indiana Jones or something rather related type movies. You find them. Indiana Jed's an interesting one.
Yeah, that one's I think it came just after Eric and Chris's
Yeah.
one, a few years later, and they were done by Michael and Mac.
Well, I don't know the names.
I think his last name is Linn.
Lynn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, if I couldn't remember your
No,
last
it's Lynn.
name.
Yeah, that rings a bell. Lynn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
and they did a great job.
Yeah.
For what it is, it's a kid-made thing, limited budget,
Yeah, and
basic
the-
equipment. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, and the best friend was named Jed, and so they decided to call it Indiana Jed. Nothing to do with Jedi's or anything like that.
His name was Jed.
Just a simple change in the title,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah, but
and the script, obviously.
But I mean, yeah, these guys put love into it.
Yeah.
I think they're free downloads, aren't they?
Yeah, they're free.
Yeah, you got them online. Yeah, the free downloads. Have a look. They're a lot of fun, and it shows a lot of love for what George Lucas and Steven Spielberg put together. Which, I mean, there's 4. Look, I don't like Crystal Skull as an Indiana Jones movie, but it's still a good movie. So the 4 movies, excellent.
Well,
and I'm going to rate this really high.
Yes,
but
I always think that The Last Crusades, as we discussed earlier about the closure of a good closure. This one, in The Last Crusades one, they had a good closure where they ride off into the sunset and we follow them.
Yeah.
And it's
while the credits are going.
Yes,
yeah.
I just think that's a great moment in filmmaking.
And it gets back to the old TV the film serials and whatever, that the hero would get the girl, the old cowboy movies. And actually, that's another thing too. I mean, look at this. You look at the old serials that George Lucas was referring to. Harrison Ford played in Star Wars a futuristic sci-fi gunslinger from the Old West. Yes. That's what it's based on. And this here was not much further removed from that too. An action hero guy, the same sort of genre sort of thing. I mean, an action hero guy based in the, what did you say it was, 30s, 40s? Yeah, that some period. And that's what the kids would have been watching in the serials back in those days. And I think George and Stephen has captured it. Fantastic.
Yes.
I'm blown away by the Indiana Jones
and
movies.
I am blown away by the independent of filmmakers who kind of follow in George or Steven Spielberg's footsteps by making their own version of that said movies.
Yeah. If I was predisposed to do so, I'll do our own. But yeah, by the time I've got the money for it, I'll be dead probably.
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas, if I may like to share them with you, that I would like to make my own Indiana Jones one day too. Hopefully it will join the other ranks of great independent filmmakers that have done their own version of Indiana Jones.
We might have a go one day.
Well,
but anyway,
we'll think about it.
Irrespective.
I had a good
These
time.
people want to go to bed.
Yeah, sorry. I did have a good time when I did my Attack of the Cat people, and as I mentioned to you guys in previous posts on Facebook, that one of my actors, who's played by Pierre O'Hanlon, he actually wore a similar outfit that makes me think of Indiana Jones.
Wasn't the hat pretty much? Didn't have Indiana Jones prop inside it? Yeah.
Yes. It was very cute. Yeah. And I'm really happy that Tracy, our prop and wardrobe lady, was able to provide it for us.
Yeah. Anyway, irrespective. We have to wind up. It's over an hour now.
Yes,
I think,
it is. So I rate this movie 10 out of 10.
Me too. I don't normally do a 10 out of 10. Because I can't really pick this one apart.
Right.
I don't think they made any mistakes that I noticed, which were really bad or took away from anything.
So it's 10 out of 10. Let's give the film a good hand.
That's the first 10 out of 10.
Woohoo! We're on a roll.
Yeah, like I said previously, we're not always going to do actions and things like this, but we are basically a podcast covering fantasy, horror, and sci-fi. But we will bring other things in occasionally. So we bring an old silent movie in. It may be a horror movie, because I want to bring one in called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and that was a surrealistic horror movie made way back when. It's a German one, and I've got a digitally remastered copy. It is excellent. And it's not much different to watching a dubbed movie, because you've got the flash cards up, you watch what's going on, card comes up, and you can see the body actions. You can follow the story quite easily. Yes. And it's got a good twist, a bit like an Alfred Hitchcock twist in it. And we might do that one day, not just yet, but
very soon.
When I can talk Sarah into doing it, so we might have a go at one of those. But that's a horror that's a horror silent movie.
So that's all we have at in this podcast episode. So I'll see you guys next time with more movies, horrors, and TV shows and other stuff.
Yada yada yada.
Yada yada yada. And this is Sarah Stephenson and
Michael Stephenson. Oh, by the way, I don't know when this is going to actually go out in a podcast, but if it goes out next couple of days, next week, whatever, keep safe, guys. I know the virus is going around worldwide. Keep safe. Stay home if you can.
And listen to our podcast if that would help make you guys feel less
hope enjoy it.
bored.
But like I said, keep safe. I mean, it's going to get probably get a bit worse in some areas. Please be safe. Keep yourself safe and your friends safe and your family safe. Do what your governments and doctors say, and we'll all get through this safely.
Amen.
Amen. Exactly.
So anyway, I'll see you guys soon. So
You won't see them. I can't see them.
Yeah, well,
We'll be talking to you soon.
We'll talk to you soon, guys, and we'll look forward to seeing you. Talking to you then. So, Sarah Stephenson signing off.
Me too.
Bye.